Thank you.
I beg to move that this House do now adjourn.
The question is that this House do now adjourn. Siobhan Baillie.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. I'm glad to have secured this debate on the pressing issues of protecting and restoring wetlands in the UK. As the Minister knows, I never duck an opportunity to talk about Slimbridge, wetlands and flamingos, and I understand that I have until 7:30 tonight, of which I also understand I probably would never be allowed to speak again in the House, although I could fill that time. I am blessed to have Slimbridge in my Stroud constituency, which is the headquarters of WWT, and I only live down the road too. I told a Gloucestershire Live reporter this week that I find it's complete madness that previous Stroud MPs have never used their expertise and really highlighted them on a national stage. And we now, really grateful for everyone's involvement, we have an all-party parliamentary group, and wetlands are very much a feature of DEFRA's constant discussions, mainly because I am pesting everybody all of the time. But it is a great pleasure. Slimbridge is a place that creates calm as you are literally walking amongst the most beautiful birds and wildlife, while also learning about conservation successes and challenges on the way. My daughters love Welly Bootland, and years ago I didn't get any phone reception at Slimbridge, so I used to go and hide there from everywhere, and it was beautiful. So World Wetlands Day on the 2nd of February celebrates the creation of an international treaty, the Convention on Wetlands, that was in 1976. I thank the Minister for taking the time to visit Slimbridge experts last week and for her advocacy on this issue, and also previous ministers who I'm grateful are also in attendance tonight. Wetlands are some of the most threatened habitats in the world, yet also the most vital for wildlife and people. In the UK, we have many types of wetlands, from coastal habitats like salt marsh, seagrass and estuaries, to inland features like ponds, lakes, rivers, streams, bogs, fens, swamps, marshes and peatland. The Severn Estuary is a true gem in my constituency. This site is key for supporting internationally important numbers on dunlin, redshank, wren plover, black-tailed godwit, shelduck, teal, pintail and I'm not even going to try and say that, but it is incredibly important. Thank you. Yes, thank you.
Can I commend the Honourable Lady for Stroud for bringing this forward? And I've noticed in the time that the Honourable Lady has been in this House, one of her greatest interests has been the wetlands and the trust in Slimbridge as well. Castle Espy in outside Cumber, my constituency of Strangford, is part of the Wetlands and Wildlife Trust as well. So does the Honourable Member not agree that bodies such as the Castle Espy Wildlife and Wetland Trust and the work that they carry out is essential when you consider that almost the entire world's population of Brent geese resides in and around there in Strangford Lough during the winter months, and this takes time and money, which needs to be better supported by government. I fully support what the Honourable Lady is trying to achieve. I know the benefits she gets for Stroud, we will get for Cumber.
Thank the honourable gentleman, and I will very much like to visit his Brent geese at some stage, but because it is just so important for the conservation and awareness, I encourage all members to go and get their social media clips with their wetlands and wildfowl. The Convention on Wetlands is also known as the Ramsar Convention. It's crucial as an international treaty aimed at conserving and promoting the sustainable use of wetlands. It's actually the oldest global intergovernmental environmental agreements in the world. It sets the standards for international cooperation on environmental action, where other more high-profile international agreements have followed. And I'm really proud to say that the UK government was an early signatory of this convention back in the 70s. This underlines our commitment to preserving these valuable ecosystems, and WWT plays a significant role as one of the 6 international organisational partners involved in the implementation. So various stakeholders, including environmental non-government organisations, contribute to this collaborative effort, showing the importance of partnerships on safeguarding our wetlands. I will take my pen. Thank you.
My honourable friend, both for initiating this debate and for kindly letting me say a word about the Freshwater Habitat Trust, whose New Forest representative Thea I met at the volunteer fair put on by the National Park Authority only last weekend. And it is amazing what these volunteers contribute, not least the New Forest Water Code and other great pointers and advice as to how we can keep these precious but delicate environments safe.
Thank you. That's such an important intervention, and to bring alive the freshwater volunteers and just how many people are gripped by this environmental work and just really take it to their hearts and run with it. But I would say that the Wetlands Squad is true squad goals, because they really do work together and work with a range of different people around this country and also around the world. And Ramsar sites, the protective wetlands of international importance, are some of the UK's most precious natural treasures. And the UK has more Ramsar sites than anywhere else in the world. We've got 175. And these sites are the equivalent of the White Cliffs of Dover or Stonehenge in their significance to our cultural identity of our nation, a country renowned for its wet weather. I will take an intervention. Thank you.
I thank the honourable member for securing this debate in the same week as World Wetlands Day. And I wanted to contribute some information about Seaton wetlands, and in particular the Black Hole Marsh. Because before 2008, the Black Hole Marsh was just a drained agricultural field. But the Environment Agency worked with a local engineering company to devise a tidal exchange gate that allows in salt water to ensure that the lagoon has just the right salinity. And since that happened, it's led to the return of the dunlin, the ringed plover and the black-tailed godwit. So does she think that the tidal exchange gate innovation is something that might be replicated elsewhere, perhaps?
I think the opportunities for wetlands and this work is absolutely endless, and I'll be interested to hear from the Minister if she has. I know there's been an extraordinary amount of investment in my honourable friend's neck of the woods and also around the country in this work, so I think it will be really helpful to hear more about these opportunities and the innovation to which my friend speaks. So I think thinking about the history, thinking about all my different colleagues here bringing alive their own experiences of wetlands, I do believe the UK can really celebrate World Wetlands Day, hold our head up high because of our history, because of our early signatory to the Convention. And if we choose to lead on this multifaceted environmental masterclass that are wetlands, we will be able to command immediate respect because of our history and because of our work so far. I will take the intervention. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and I congratulate the Honourable Member for Stroud on securing this important debate. And without being competitive, obviously Somerset does have some amazing wetland sites and indeed Ramsar sites. But Somerset Wetlands is England's largest supranational nature reserve, which includes the West Sedgemoor in my constituency. So does the Honourable Member for Stroud agree with me that declarations such as this are crucial in reversing nature's decline and in the fight against climate change?
I think it's. I will come on to the fight with climate change because you are absolutely right. My honourable friend speaks about Somerset. We know that the investment, £20 million, I think, went in for flood resilience, the work going on with farmers, and that expertise that she speaks to is able to be sold around this country and also exported around the world. So I'm excited for her to be able to speak so fondly of that. So I think with volunteers in mind, I do want to speak to the current situation with our wetland. I'm sending love, respect and absolute hugs to all of the Slimbridge volunteers, of which we couldn't do the conservation work without them, because it is a sad fact that for centuries we've not been looking after our wetlands. There hasn't been that love and care that perhaps everyone in this room would want to see. A staggering 75% of our UK wetlands have been lost over 300 years. So this is not just a recent thing, it's 300 years. And while the rate of decline is now slowing because of a lot of the work that's going on, the precious few wetlands that do remain are under considerable pressure, and we would say are in a poorer condition than we would like. So we think that we could do much more work. So I'm going to speak very briefly about what we should be focusing on now, and over the coming months I would welcome a renewed push on 4 transformative steps that would speed up the progress of creating and restoring 100,000 additional hectares. I would invite everybody in this room to come and join the APPG for wetlands, to join this fight, because it is crucial for the net zero targets. And I would like action, but I will also take manifesto commitments. So if that is it, so I think for the number one, I'd say a commitment to a national. I will give way. Thank you.
The priorities. Mr Deputy Speaker, can I just set out how impressive the member for Stroud has persuaded me as a former minister and colleagues across this House about the wonderful benefits of wetlands. We are all more knowledgeable thanks to the Honourable Member for Stroud and the work of WWT in her constituency. And I wonder if she will also recognise, as well as the benefits for climate change and biodiversity, the benefits to our health, our mind, body and soul, that can really appreciate the value of spending time in green and blue spaces. There seems to be some competition, Mr Deputy Speaker, 32 miles of coastline and many lakes. I am a wetland in the English Lake District. But the benefit to our mental health and our physical health cannot be underestimated, and also that a wetland could be just as much as a pond, and that the 30 million gardeners across this great land also can play a significant part.
Absolutely right, and I know my Rydenborough friend is a keen walker and gets out into the environment as much as possible, but to be beside water has a particularly tranquil effect on most people, and it's certainly something WWT campaigns on because we know the benefits. So I would say my requests: commit to a national strategy for the UK wetlands, because I also know that actually most of the work has already been done. So let's label it a national strategy and let's pull it all together, because I think DEFRA is doing some great work. I'd like to see a dedicated domestic wetlands team at DEFRA, really to ape the success of the Peat team, which I know are brilliant and really experts. If I can't have a whole team, I will take a named civil servant that we can go to who really owns all the different moving parts, because I know it's in lots of different parts of the DEFRA family. To create a nutrient offsetting code to help rebuild investor confidence in that market, to provide guidance and training for national flood management to ensure land managers and councils and practitioners can take advantage of these options, to create a salt marsh restoration grant scheme as we've done for peatland and scale up the salt marsh creation through the Nature for Climate Fund, and to require new developments to include sustainable urban drainage systems. There's already Schedule 3 that we believe should be enacted, and I've spoken to that in the House on a number of occasions. But as I said, lots of very, very good work. I think we should talk about it more and perhaps pull it all together, because wetlands are nature's secret weapon. And I recall when the Honourable Member for Copeland came to Slimbridge, and we had a mic drop moment when the experts explained that wetlands can store 18 times more carbon than trees, and while a tree takes 10 years to get to its full pace, Mr Deputy Speaker, wetlands are instant. And I think the slogan for wetlands should be basically #JustAddWater. Just add water for environmental clout, for well-being, for flood defence, for carbon storage and for water quality too. Now I understand the Minister will speak to some of the work that the government is doing, because there is an awful lot. But I do think that if there was more awareness about what is going on, I don't think we would have seen the nutrient neutrality drama that was going on and some of the firefighting that ministers were having to do, because so much work was actually there, but nobody had mentioned it. And I think home builders are already kind of getting there. We just need to light the touch paper and let everyone run. So on the just a few points, I'm not going to go. I've got a lot more to say. Mr Deputy Speaker has a life to get to at some stage. I know how long hours that he works. But listen, the powerful benefits, British wildlife. I think this place talks too much about targets and carbon stuff. Actually, species and wildlife people get. And the reality is, in the UK, wetlands cover only 3% of land, but they support 10% of its species. You can see how we can scale up on biodiversity and support if we really do invest and think through and protect our wetlands. On flood resilience, the government's Green Recovery Challenge Fund helps projects such as WWT's Two Valleys slow the flow, use the effectiveness of natural flood management. That stops flood pressure on properties downstream to Somerset. I know some of this work is going on in councils all around the country, but let's bring it to life and sort of stop the devastating impacts of things like Storm Henk that we saw recently. On water pollutant filters, I know from the Minister's previous brief, she's worked extraordinarily hard on sewage and the old Victorian networks that we are trying to repair. But what we do know is specially engineered wetlands called treatment wetlands have the potential to remove up to 60% of metals trapped and retain up to 90% of sediment runoff and eliminate 90% of nitrogen. You know, we can use wetlands for removing pollutants in water. And to the point on the physical well-being, spending just 10 minutes in urban wetlands has shown to yield extensive improvements. And I urge everyone to go down to Bridgewater and see the juxtaposition of the big high-rises and the wetlands that have been created and people using those through through COVID and beyond. The Climate Change Committee has stressed the importance of protecting and restoring salt marsh and seagrass because they are so efficient at carbon removal, and the long-term salt marshes bury carbon 40 times faster than woodland. Now, I get that government are obsessed with trees because you can count them, and we like to have measurable things. However, we have got other options as well. So do the trees, but let's do the wetlands as well. And the economic benefits. The WWT has a superb Blue Leaders group of businesses. They have backed this because they can see the benefits and they want to invest in the environmental power of this country. So they're doing it through wetlands. And people like Aviva put a massive amount of money in because they can see for their customers and their employees, this stuff works for the country and beyond. So in short, wetlands have a nature-boosting, flood-busting, carbon-sinking, mood-lifting, water-cleaning superpowers. So why are we not making more of them, or even more of them? Because I know exactly how much work the Minister and others are doing on this. Thank you.
Much. Minister.
Thank you so much, Mr Deputy Speaker, and what a wonderful wetland-busting speech that was. And I expected no less, actually, of the honourable friend from Stroud. She is not only a wonderful advocate for her constituency of Stroud, but a particular advocate for WWT. And for all things wetlands has been pointed out by colleagues here, really helping to get that embedded onto our parliamentary agenda. And she is fortunate, I must say, to have the wonderful Wildfowl and Wetland Centre at Slimbridge in her constituency. I'd like to say I am a little bit envious, because I am, but actually I do have the Somerset levels in my own constituency, which has been pointed out by one of our colleagues. Is itself an internationally recognised wetland. So we do indeed have a great deal in common. And I thank her for what she's laid out today and making the case for more attention for wetlands. And I pick up many of her points. But I also really, in my speech, want to convey that I believe that we're already doing a great deal for wetlands, which covers such a multitude, as she said, and not just these huge internationally protected sites, but right down to the Garden Pond. That was such a well-made point by the previous minister. And so I want to talk very much about what we are doing, but obviously recognising that there is almost always more to do. And I think actually the importance of wetlands is recognised by the very fact that some people have stayed for the adjournment, which is not always the case. So thank you to them. These ecosystems they're not just landscapes of natural beauty, as has been said, and biodiversity. They're actually critical too to our mission to recover nature, to restore nature, and to hit our climate change targets. So I'm going to lay out the things we're already doing and the things we're working on. A year ago, we published our Environmental Improvement Plan, and that set out government's ambitions for the whole country, for the whole nation, to improve the environment. And those commitments are underpinned by our legally binding Environment Act targets. And they set out an apex target to halt the decline of species by 2030. And this should not be taken lightly. This is a globally leading target. To set a target like this in law is something pretty phenomenal, actually, to have committed to that. And we've committed to creating or restoring over 500,000 hectares of wildlife-rich habitats by 2042. And internationally, at the most recent CBD COP15, the UK was at the forefront of efforts to secure another ambitious target or agreement, which was to protect 30% of the world's land and oceans by 2030, including through the conservation and restoration of freshwater habitats. And we had a great mention of the volunteers, the freshwater volunteers working in the Forest of Deane, recognising, the New Forest. I've actually written New Forest down. In the New Forest, recognising the importance of the habitat in their area, in my honourable friend's constituency. And in December, we furthered our commitment to freshwater wetland habitats at the UNFCCC COP28 by signing up to an international freshwater challenge. We're also proud members of the International Ramsar Convention on Wetlands, which has been mentioned, and across the UK, including the Crown dependencies and the overseas territories, we protect 175 internationally important Ramsar sites. That's more than any other country in the world. We have laid out, I just wanted to add as well something that we've done through the EIP, the Environment Improvement Plan, and the National Adaptation Plan, that we will be establishing a UK wetland inventory in support of the Ramsar Convention. So that basically means mapping where these wetlands are, these really varied wetlands, so that we know where they are, and then that will inform our actions to either restore them, improve them, add to them. So I think that will be very beneficial, and has been something many people have been calling for. And these wetland sites have received enhanced protections that reflect their importance. We've given them the same protections as our country's most precious sites, our protected habitat sites, to prevent damage by applying rigorous environmental assessments. And on commitment in England, our commitment in England is to getting 75% of our protected sites into favourable condition by 2042, and that will benefit large swathes of these wetlands, and much restoration work will be included in that. And the UK's wetlands represent some of our nation's most precious and sensitive habitats, as has been recognised, providing a wonderful place for wintering and breeding habitats for wetland birds. We've had a big list, I'm going to add to it. I saw so many of these at Slimbridge last week. The black-tailed godwit, curlew, the beautiful Buick swans, the golden plovers, which I took issue with the wonderful guides who worked there because they look browner, more brown than gold, but they said the sun had to be shining to see the gold. Wonderful lapwings, that's a bird I love. Peewits we used to call them when I grew up on the farm at home. All there at the wildlife and wetlands site at Slimbridge, who absolutely must be commended for the work that they do. And actually the fantastic advice they give to people when they go visiting. It doesn't matter what your knowledge is, Mr Deputy Speaker, I don't know if you're a keen birder, but even if you're not, you would be inspired, because honestly they point out the most amazing birds flying in, flying out, flying in flocks. It's absolutely captivating, as my honourable friend has laid out, and it is indeed a treasure, a natural treasure. And the incredible diversity of wetland habitats, from blanket bog to these aquatic marginal areas, reed beds to riverine habitats, make up this huge contribution, and restoring them is critical to hitting our targets. And that's why we've launched 12 landscape-scale nature recovery projects over the past 2 years, and half of them include wetland habitats within wilding mosaics. And quite a lot of that money has been referred to, has come to Somerset. We've had some really significant grants for Shatwick Moor, for the Honourable Member's constituency, also my constituency, to restore worked out peatlands that have dried out and are hemorrhaging carbon, to re-wet them, also to work with farmers to raise the water table, to have wetter peat, basically getting back to the original state of the peatland, the wetland. And these projects are supporting species recovery, building resilience against the impacts of climate change. In total, those projects are something like 200,000 100,000 hectares. So it is a significant amount that's already going to restoring these wonderful sites. And we're just about to launch our £25 million Species Survival Fund grants, which we launched last year, and we'll be announcing the successful bids very shortly. And a whole range of those will restore more habitats, including wetlands. And half of the projects funded by our £14.5 million Species Recovery Programme Capital Grant Scheme will support the recovery of wetland habitats, including such species as that wonderful lapwing that I just mentioned and the black-tailed godwit, but also mammals like the water vole and the white-faced darter. I know that's sparked the Deputy Speaker's interest. And of course, as has been said, 10% of our species live in these wetlands, so it is really, really important that we A, look after them, and B, help those that are on the decline. We've also got our countryside stewardship schemes where we pay for actions to create and manage reed beds and fens. And at the recent Oxford Farming Conference back in January, as part of the new environmental land management schemes, we are updating these actions so that we better reflect the costs and income foregone for all farm types to create and maintain these important habitats. And that's actually resulted in some really increased payment rates. For example, there was a previous rate of £35 a hectare for management of a fen, and this is rocketed to £920 a hectare, and that's been extremely well received. And in addition, we're making other offers less prescriptive and more flexible in terms of how the outcomes are achieved, and that will help to incentivise the creation of new wetlands, contributing to our biodiversity outcomes, water quality and net zero. And beyond this crucial role as a home for wildlife, we also recognise the invaluable ecosystem services that wetlands provide, including water quality and management, carbon sequestration and public well-being. All of these have been ably referred to. Of course, I'll give way.
I think the Minister, I think there's even more going on than I had even understood. And I think just to my point on the UK strategy for wetland, over 50 other countries have got a strategy. And I think what and as I said, I will take a manifesto commitment rather than, but if the government would be willing to just look at what those other countries have done, because I think quite a lot of the work is already being done and is already there, and whether we could make that commitment down the line to make sure that we are, we're bringing together all that focus. I know it would make a lot of people very, very happy.
I thank her for that point. And we work widely on the international stage. Indeed, some of our Blue Planet Fund and our Darwin Fund actually goes to working on wetland areas internationally, particularly restoring mangroves and work on climate change. So we're actually already doing a great deal. But we can always learn from other countries and other nations. It should be a reciprocal learning process. And I think we will continue to work like that. And I was going to mention that through our plan for water, which was launched last year to tackle pollution, water pollution, storm overflows, agricultural pollution, plastics pollution, road runoff, chemicals and pesticides, there's actually work going on wetlands that to create wetlands to help solve this problem, take out the pollution, but also there's work in a number of catchments on wastewater treatment works, also to take out the phosphate, which is actually affecting some of the wetlands. So we're taking out the nutrients, but also we're enabling the creation of nature-based solutions, including wetlands, to help clean the water as well. And this was also well referred to. And wetlands can also play a really important role reducing flood risk through natural management, creating of wetlands to reduce and slow the flow of water. And back in September 2023, the Environment Agency and DEFRA announced £25 million of funding for improving flood resilience through these nature-based solutions. I just wanted to also touch on SUDS, Sustainable Drainage Systems, a subject oddly Mr Deputy Speaker, very dear to my heart, which I have, can I say, banged on about since I was a backbencher. But we are making big progress on the SUDs, as my honourable friend will know, and with working with the DULUC department on this, because getting SUDs into all our developments, it can make such a big difference. SUDs are like mini wetlands, basically, within our urban habitats that can take the water and the runoff, and they've got myriad advantages in slowing the flow, reducing flooding, but that's so nature diverse. And I had a wonderful visit just this week to, it's actually Finsbury Park, not very far away, to a wonderful housing development, a Bentley housing development with lots of big tower blocks, and all around them were these SUDs, but they just looked like beautiful wetlands, which in fact is what they were. So they're already integrated. So many companies are already doing that, and we are moving as a government to get to that stage where they have to be an integral part of our developments. I just wanted to touch as well on, obviously, wetlands can play a really important role in addressing both the causes and the effect of climate change, and that's why DEFRA is funding £300,000 worth of projects this financial year to measure and verify the carbon storage potential of salt marsh habitats, which again was raised by my honourable friend, and that will allow private investment to be leveraged through the salt marsh carbon code. So it's basically a standard will be verified for carbon credits for salt marsh, so that will trigger a market in this, and private finance can then be leveraged in much as we do with the peatland code. So that's on the way. That's one of her asks, I believe. And the Nature for Climate Fund is aiming to deliver the restoration of approximately 35,000 hectares of peatland by 2025. That's an area the size of Staffordshire. Somerset's getting some of that money, and many other areas. That's a tripling of historic average annual restoration funds for these areas. And a great deal of that funding as well is going to the Great Northern Bog. It's a huge area that's being restored with this funding. And then the England Peat Action Plan sets out a strategic framework to improve management and protection of upland and lowland peatlands. And we mustn't forget that all of those areas are basically wetlands. They're only really effective wetlands when they're in a healthy state, which is basically wet. That's why we have to do much restoration work. And in the net zero strategy, we've committed to the aim of restoring approximately 280,000 hectares of peatland in England by 2050. That's building on that 35,000 hectares, which is well underway. And the £80 million Green Recovery Challenge Fund has also been a cornerstone in our efforts and has contributed to funding a range of nature-based solutions for climate mitigation, adaptation, including riverine, coastal, floodplain, and grazing and marsh habitats. And that fund, as many in this chamber will know, was set up during COVID to help with lots of the effects and to get people out into the nature and the countryside, but also to create skills and jobs. And it was extremely successful. And we also recognise, as has been mentioned, the huge importance of improving access to both our green space and our blue space. Blue space obviously being nature areas or space where there is water included, and that's been very eloquently outlined about just what that means to us. My honourable friend from Copeland also touched on this, and it's a point incredibly well made, which is why also this government is investing a great deal in access to nature, which includes both blue and green space. And by embedding our projects and committing in our environment improvement plan to a world where everyone should not be further away than a 15-minute walk from nature, we are really embedding this into what we do, and any nature, but of course wetlands will be included in that. And it's a great day today because today is the 1 year on from our environment improvement plan, and we're celebrating all the great things that we've rolled out over this year for the environment, with more to do, because we have a framework, we have a plan, and we have the targets. I just wanted penultimately to touch on the fact that it's not only about government money. We are driving to attract money from the private sector into all this investment in nature and nature recovery. And that's a latent and expanding market, and there's significant opportunity for wetlands in that space. We've already stimulated investment in wetland protection and creation through programmes like our Natural Environment Investment Readiness Fund, which had its third round launched in December, and that's grants of up to 100,000 to help farmers start some of these projects, re-wetting, re-establishing wetlands, finding out what crops they could grow from these re-wetted wetlands, and what viable market they might be able to tap into. So you'll be pleased I'm reaching the end of my comments. I wanted to thank everybody that made comments. I think there's genuine huge interest in wetlands, isn't there, in Parliament, on every side. And I hugely want to recognise the work that my honourable friend from Stroud has done. She is a tremendous advocate, very much listening to the points she's made. But I hope she agrees that we are actually doing, I think she even admitted a great deal more than even she realised, because we recognise the importance of our wetlands. It's World Wetlands Day on Friday. I hope everyone will be celebrating. You can watch my Instagram with all those wonderful pictures from Slimbridge, and I would like to thank her very much again for her contribution on wetlands.
And what a lovely and fascinating debate to end the day on. Thank you and congratulations. The question is that this House do now adjourn. May that me say aye? Contrary no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Order. Order.
The proceeding has ended. 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 The proceeding has ended.